Oh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Liu, good to see you again. I'm fascinated because you come here every year, and it must be very difficult from your background. And I look at what the mission statement is for Treasury. If we just put that up for a minute, and I think sometimes we become confused as to who it is we work for. I don't really view you as working for the administration. I view you as working for the American people.
That is exactly how I view myself.
Yeah, and I think we're the same way. Yeah. But sometimes the conversation drifts.
He works for the American people too.
Obviously. Yeah. It drifts into something else. But I just wanted to read this, so because I know people at home, where I'm coming from, if they were watching this, they would have fallen into this coma because of the Washingtonese, where nobody understands what's actually being said, so they just kind of nod and then they walk off and do something else. But the mission statement for the Treasury is maintain a strong economy and create economic and job opportunities by promoting the conditions that enable economic growth and stability at home and abroad, strengthen national security by combating threats and protecting the integrity of the financial system, and manage the U.S. government's finances and resources effectively. Now, I've looked at your background. It's very impressive. A lot of us have been spent in the public sector, not the private sector. And I think that's where the disconnect. For somebody who's been in the private sector all his life and has understood that a budget is something that is but exactly where you need you're going. It's a roadmap. And now we may call it visionary of where we'd like things to go, but where I'm from, in Western Pennsylvania, it's more kitchen table economics, where a husband and a wife sit down to figure out what do they have to work with revenue-wise, and that dictates what they can spend. In Washington, we dictate what we're going to spend, and they say we don't come anywhere close to being able to pay for that. Now we're going to have to do something else, and the something else is usually borrowing. And we continue year after year after year with deficit spending. And we're really proud right now that we've actually reduced deficit spending. We're actually below $500 billion a year, and we're feeling pretty good about it. And I keep thinking about this, a husband and a wife sitting down, and the wife says, you know, honey, this is the best year since we've got married. You brought home $32,500 last year. And he says, yeah, I know. I had a lot of overtime, and I was able to work a little bit harder. And she says, that's great. It's okay if I go out and spend $37,000 or $38,000 then, right? And he says, oh, no, let's get together on this because the math just doesn't work going forward. Now, I look at these things, and I start to wonder myself, if people at home can get it, and we tell them to tighten their belt, and we tell them they're going to have to do more with less, and a lot of it falls down to a broken tax code, and the reason we need a bigger IRS is because the code's too big, and the people call in because they don't understand it, and more importantly, they're scared to death of the penalties for not abiding by it. Where you are and where you've been, and you advise the president on this, has there ever been a serious conversation, and I mean this sincerely, and this is Republicans and Democrats, has there ever been a serious conversation about where is it that we're going with this? Do we really look at this and say, this is sustainable? And then the other the conversation on inversions, I mean, honestly, we need to put that poster up as the beatings will continue until morale improves. We keep accusing these people, tax cheats, these people are horrible. I pay wage taxes, by the way. Anybody that looks at the tax code understands that when it comes to Social Security, yeah, the person, the associate puts some money in, so does the employer. It's a matching fund. When we talk about these people going overseas, they don't go overseas because they hate America. They go overseas because we're making it impossible for them to be profitable here. By the way, everybody that works for them is paying wage taxes, and they're matching it to a great degree, and they're paying a lot of other taxes. My question to you, as you start the end of a career, where is it that you see this going? Because I don't see it at $19 trillion in the red and climbing, and this president's budget takes it way over the cliff. Could you possibly be able to sit down and say, you know what, Mr. President, looks good to me. I mean, this is a very bleak future, but we have assets that we could turn this around with proper tax code, regulation reform, and really make it easier for people in America to be successful. They pay a high portion of whatever they make in taxes. So you only have a couple seconds left, and you only have a couple months left too, but what would you do differently? Because I just don't see it changing.
Well, I'll do the best I can in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I know, and this could take 3 or 4 hours for us to talk. But
look, the truth is, it's hard to compare a kitchen table and a federal budget. There's a fundamental difference between a government, a sovereign that goes on forever, and a household that has, the years that it manages. So there are big differences between the two. But even at the household kitchen table, I mean, how many of us have sat down with our spouse and said, can we afford this house? Can we borrow X amount and have the next 30 years to pay it back? And reach the decision you could. Now,
Just to interrupt you, please. Listen, you can't borrow your way out of debt. And we're continuing to build this debt that's going to capsize this entire country. And there is no difference between kitchen table and what we're talking about. The only difference is here, we can raise taxes or we can print our own money. You can't do that at home.
Right,
and that's where the big separation is. I must tell you, the American people have lost confidence in the way we run this company.
Thank you.